All right, YouTube Axis and Allies brethren, welcome back to Turret 2 in Wake Forest, North Carolina for this Axis and Allies 42.2 version battle between No Limit as the Allies and myself, Captain Jack, as the Axis. So this is Japan's first turn, so round one turn for Japan. The purchases for this round, they'll have 30 IPCs to spend. They're going to build one industrial complex, they're going to build one destroyer and one sub. So they're going to produce one industrial complex, one destroyer, and one sub for 29 IPCs. That'll leave them one IPC left over to spend for the next turn. All right, so now for the battles, there'll be three. The first one in Buryatia, we're going to have 3 infantry from Manchuria, 1 infantry transported from Japan, along with 1 tank, 1 fighter from Japan, and 1 bomber from Japan, all coming in attacking 5 Russian infantry units. In Anhui, we're going to have 1 fighter from Manchuria, and the 4 infantry from Kiangsu are going to go into Anhui. And last, in Yunnan, we're going to have 1 fighter from C-Zone 50 go into Yunnan. It'll have 1 movement left in its fuel gauge. We're going to have 1 fighter from French Indochina. It'll have 3 movements left in its fuel gauge. We have 1 infantry and 1 artillery from Kwangtung. One cruiser bombardment, because the infantry and artillery are going to come in on transport. I'm sorry I failed to mention that, but the infantry and artillery on Kwangtung are going to come in via transport. And also a battleship bombardment. So the battleship came down from C-Zone 60. The cruiser came over from C-Zone 50. All right, so that's it for the 3 battles. I'll get those set up. I'll get Buryatia set up first. Okay, so for the Battle of Buryatia, we've got 4 infantry from Japan, 1 tank from Japan, 1 fighter, and 1 bomber. So that means we'll have 4 black, 1 hit die, 1 blue die for the tank, 1 blue dice for the fighter, and 1 red for the bomber. Russia will have 5 green 2-hit die representing their infantry. So I can roll all this at one time because they're all different colors. So the green will be the Russians, the other colors will be Japan. The rest of it will be Japan. Here's the roll. And okay, so for the green, there were 1, 2, 3, no hits for the green, no hits for Russia. For Japan, there were 2 hits on the blue, the tank, and the fighter, and 1 hit with the bomber. So there was 3 hits for Japan. So far, so good. So that'll eliminate 3 infantry units for Russia. And we'll obviously press the battle on. So that'll leave 4 black dice for the Japanese infantry, 1 blue for the tank, 1 blue for the fighter, and 1 red for the bomber. And there'll be 2 green dice representing the 2 remaining infantry for the Russian. Roll this all again. And there was 1 hit this time for the Russians. There were 3 hits actually for the Japanese, but all they needed was 2. So the Russians have been completely eliminated in Buryatia. The Japanese did lose 1 infantry division. So Buryatia will be survived by 3 infantry and 1 tank for the Japanese. The bomber and the fighter will be moving during non-combat movements, and the fighter will have 3 movements left in its fuel gauge, and the bomber will have 4 left in its fuel gauge. All right, so let's get, next will be the Battle of Anhui. I'll get that set up next. So in Anhui, we'll have 1 blue die for the fighter, for the Japanese fighter. We'll have 4 black dice for the Japanese infantry. And we'll have 2 green dice for the for the American defense. All right, so we can roll all this at one time. We're just hoping the luck continues for the bad guys, for the Axis. Here we go. And, okay, so there was 1 hit by the Japanese and 1 hit by the Americans. So they each lose an infantry unit. So the U.S. is down to 1 infantry unit remaining. Japanese is down to 3. Japanese are down to 3 infantry units remaining. Look, they missed with the fighter. That would have taken care of the unit of the battle right there. But no, we have to mush on because the fighter missed. So again, we've got the fighter at 1 blue die, the infantry at 3 black dice, and 1 green 2-hit die for the American infantry. All right, so here's the roll for the second round of battle. And the Americans hit again, but the Japanese also got their 1 hit. In fact, they got 2 hits on the black die. So the American infantry has been eliminated. They did take out 2 Japanese infantry along the way. So Anhui is now in possession of the Japanese, just like Beretia is. So they'll go up to 32 on the IPC chart. America will go down from 42 to 41, and Russia went down from 20 to 19 because of Beretia. All right, so one last battle. Got one last battle in Yunnan. Got 1 fighter from C-Zone 50, so that's a blue dice. We've got 1 fighter from French Indochina, that's another blue die. 1 infantry and artillery from Kwangtung, that's 2 green die, 2-hit die. 1 cruiser bombardment, that's a blue 3-hit die, and 1 battleship bombardment is 1 red 4-hit die. Defending in Yunnan will be 2 green infantry units. I can't roll them at the same time because I've already got green dice going. So here is the attack for the Japanese in Yunnan. Looking for 2 hits. And they only got 1 hit. Only 1 hit. All 3 of the 3-hit die missed. So the 2 fighters and the cruiser bombardment missed. So 1 infantry unit has been eliminated for the U.S. They will fire back with 2 green die. And there was 1 hit. So Japanese will lose an infantry. So remaining will be 2 fighters at the blue hit die and an artillery at a green 2-hit die. So here's the Japanese roll. And there were 3 hits and they only needed 1. So the Americans have been eliminated. They get to fire back with 1 green 2-hit die. See if they take out the artillery. I'll have a decision to make if this is a hit. And it was a miss. All right, so we had a miss there. So Yunnan now goes to the Japanese. They'll go up to 33. The Americans will go down to 40. And Yunnan is Japan's. I'll be back with non-combat movements. All right, so for non-combat movements, the bomber in Beretia will land in Manchuria. The fighter in Beretia will also land in Manchuria. That was only 1 movement, so they had plenty of movements left in their fuel gauge. The fighter in Anhui is going to go 3 spaces because it had 3 spaces left in its fuel gauge. 1, 2, 3 down to French Indochina. there was the two fighters in Yunnan one had one movement left in its fuel gauge and one had three. The one with one will move down into French Indochina. The one with three will move into the carrier that's going to move into C-Zone 61. So it'll land on that carrier there in C-Zone 61. The two destroyers will move into C-Zone 62. One infantry from Malaya will move north into French Indochina. And the sub in C-Zone, it was in C-Zone 44, will move into C-Zone 47. It was in 44, but it'll move to 47. Okay, so for placement of new units, the industrial complex is going to go down in Manchuria. The destroyer is going to go in C-Zone 60. And a submarine is also going to go in C-Zone 60. So that will do it for non-combat and for placement of new units. Again, Japan will have one to spend next turn, and they're sitting on 33 IPCs for this turn. So they'll have 34 IPCs to spend next round. So, for unit recap for Japan, in Buryatia, they have 3 infantry and 1 tank. In Manchuria, they have 1 bomber and 1 fighter. In Anhui, they have 2 infantry. In Yunnan, they have 1 artillery. In French Indochina, they have 3 infantry, 2 fighters, and 1 artillery. In the East Indies, they have 2 infantry. In Borneo, 1 infantry. New Guinea, 1 infantry. In the Solomon Islands, they have 1 infantry. The Philippines, 1 infantry and 1 artillery. The Caroline Islands, they have 1 infantry. Wake Island, 1 infantry. Okinawa, 1 infantry. Iwo Jima, 1 infantry. C-Zone 60, they have 1 destroyer and 1 sub. C-Zone 62, they have 2 destroyers and 1 transport. On the Big Island of Japan, they have 3 infantry. They have 1 artillery. They have 1 AA gun. And in C-Zone 61, they have 1 aircraft carrier with 1 fighter, 1 battleship, 1 cruiser, and 1 transport. So, that'll do it for this Japan Turn 1 of this Axis and Allies 42.2 edition. So from Turret 2 in Wake Forest, North Carolina, Captain Jack, over and out.